Okay, looking crazy because I'm getting a pimple. I had to put a bit of clay mask on there. All right, I've been thinking a lot about how trauma and attachment are part of the same. Like, if I was starting a university, I'd have them in the same department, right? I'd be like, trauma and attachment department. Because here's the thing, attachment disorders, like less functional attachment styles, right? Those emerge from minor traumas in early development, like pre-verbal development. And so you don't have one without the other, right? You don't get attachment issues if there weren't enough blows to the system in that early formative time, right? So there is a like little t trauma that gives rise to attachment issues, right? And yeah, it's also that because that forms our template for relationships, and it is what we have been printed on as being home and familiar. What's for us? This thing that we were born into and raised with is ours, and so we feel an affinity toward things that are like that. So not only do we have dysfunctional ways of interacting, but we also have dysfunctional ways of identifying what's for us. And I think that there are these two different fields, schools of thought, models, let's say two models, and they're working around a lot of the same stuff. And it's useful that there are two models because of where they come out and how they impact things and how you apply knowledge to affect different outcomes over time. But these two are very related, and I'm just starting to see how they come together in this. That you can't talk about attachment without trauma, and you can't talk about trauma without attachment. Well, okay, you can have classic PTSD, a building fell on you, your house burnt down. Like these things, you can have standard one-off PTSD kind of responses. However, I bet if we did more thorough research, my hypothesis is that people who had good attachment and low trauma in early life are less likely to have PTSD later in life. So there's still a link. It becomes more diffuse, less determined, I guess. You kind of say like, okay, somebody could have a really horrific experience and still be traumatized even though they had a good start in life. This does happen. But if you were going to put it on like a spectrum of probability, that would be the low end of the spectrum, right? If you have a really good start in life, something fucked up happens to you, you're probably going to come away still mostly intact. You need a little help to get back on track, but be okay. It won't disintegrate you, right? Like it'll rock your world, but you remain constant. If you come from a place on the other end of the spectrum, even minor experiences could completely disintegrate you, right? Disintegrate. So like we fall apart. We no longer are cohesive selves. And I mean selves, I've talked about it. I think it's just a rotation of states as much as it's anything. I really do believe in that model. It's the one that makes the most sense and has the most applicable value to me. So, self, okay. And then you want to do the spiritual side where it's the observing self versus the egoic self, right? We kind of understand these things. You have parts therapy that goes into what I refer to as my aspects, the different parts of me that have different needs and drives and functions and liabilities, right? So, yeah, their self is complex, but what I mean when I say like disintegrating the self is the whole ecosystem breaks down. Like the whole program just breaks away from itself. Rather than the world kind of shatters around us, we shatter from within. And I think that's the difference between a person having a really difficult and stressful experience or somebody having a traumatic experience. And I think that we're more prone to come apart if we weren't well integrated to start with from the beginning. So even with your classic PTSD, I don't think trauma really expresses that way without some part of the attachment early in life being patchy, maybe it was a great childhood, you had amazing parents, something well beyond their control happened, and just in this particular area, because a parent had to deploy, or there was a crisis and the family had to live on two different coasts for a while, or something like this. You don't know, like, what happens. I know Gabor Mate's story is very much that his mother had to give him to a stranger to save him during the Nazi occupation, and yeah, that impacted him. She loved him, but she was so stressed out. He was co-regulating with her distressed nervous system, and then he was, as far as an infant understands it, abandoned. She clearly didn't abandon her child. She did one of the most painful and courageous things a mother could do, which is to put your child in the care of others for their best interests. Like, that's like sawing off your own limbs with a rusty blade, right? It's horrible. She certainly didn't abandon him. She came back and was able to reclaim him. So it was only a period of, I believe, months that they were apart, but in that time, infant Gabor experienced that as abandonment, and to an infant, being abandoned by a caregiver is like imminent death is upon me now. It's the terror. It's like existential terror. And so having a mom who's dysregulated by the war, and then having to like hand him over to a stranger, thank God she can come back and get him back. What a blessing that is. But for the baby, he couldn't understand that. We're pre-verbal. We don't have words, and we experience that everything that happens is us. We're the cause. We're everything. And so we internalize that in strange ways before we have language and other models to help us understand. And so, yeah, we have this one patchy part. Other things can traumatize us a lot more easily around those types of issues later in life. And how does that relate to relationships and attachment as adults? Well, listening to Andrew Huberman he had the great Esther Perel on with him, and they were talking about how the neural network we use to bond with our parents or primary caregivers is actually repurposed for our romantic partnerships. No other system is repurposed that way. But when it comes to the attachment to our primary caregivers, probably our parents, and our romantic attachments, it's the same network getting recycled. And I'm like, okay, so now you have a pattern down here, and this is at the root of repetition compulsion. Why do we keep doing it? Because we're trying to solve for what we couldn't resolve then. Why is that difficult? Because we were in a pre-verbal state when that puzzle was presented to us and we failed to solve it. And now we're in a verbal state trying to do that work unconsciously. And so all the weird messed up stuff that happens in relationships, it probably has some roots in that, right? So now if you have good attachment, you didn't have any real interruptions, nothing said to you the world is dangerous or that you don't matter or your needs are a burden, none of that happened, you're probably going to go to people who are like, hi, everything's okay, you're okay, let me meet your needs, you can meet mine, we're happy, we're well. And that'll feel like home. You'll have the affinity to that. But if you're not in the like 25% of people or less who are lucky enough to actually have that, you're out here with the rest of us trying to figure it out and like retrofit solutions from a time where we can't even understand what we were. Like, we don't really know who or what we were as infants. We don't have a memory. And even being told that, it's hard to imagine being pre-verbal, especially if you're like me and your head's full of words. It's very hard to imagine how I would have navigated crying myself to sleep as an infant, not knowing if anybody was ever going to come for me, and not even being able to formulate or explore the question, right? So you got to think, this isn't like, oh, well, obviously my mother is tired and just can't come to me at the moment, and I'm sure when she's rested she'll come and I'll be okay. Infants don't think this. We can't think this. We can't even word, right? We'd have no words for stuff. So it's very impactful when these things happen, and understanding that we are repurposing that network to be with adult partners and start a new program. My best guess is we do that because the dumb logic of nature, not to call nature dumb, all respect, it's obviously infinitely wise that it goes on with and without us, right? But there's sort of a dumb logic that it uses, which is like, these two people did this, they were able to procreate and continue the species. So let's get the progeny of that, the product of that union, to model that they can do the same, right? This is my best armchair Evo Psych theory on this, but it kind of would make sense. Why would you repurpose that circuit and nothing else? Because boil it down, the meaning of life is to make more life, right? We're here to replicate. And so it would be prioritized to say, look, let's not mess around trying to reinvent the wheel. You come from two people who got together and successfully reproduced. Just do what the fuck they did, right? Like, just do that. Now, being conscious and informed people in the modern world, we're blessed with a unique opportunity to actually go in and say, look, I understand that this enabled my parents to reproduce, but I want to have a family. I want to be part of a community. I want us all to flourish. I want to leave a legacy. So now I have to come in with this big, juicy frontal lobe of mine and try to, like, figure out how to look at what they did that, yes, allowed for reproduction, but say, I need to come in at a different level of that, get under it, rise above it, whatever it is, to say, look, when I do this, I'm going to take my chances of maybe not successfully reproducing, but I'm going to do it in a way that if I do, I mean, I'm upgrading our species, right? So to have it be less of a, like, get my genes across the line race, to being like, what genes am I putting in the pool, and what are we going to do to help the people who result from that to really live well and flourish? Because if you don't understand and you choose the wrong partner, you've pretty much doomed the next generation to roll that same boulder up that same hill. And I think we can do better. I think for people who have done better, they need to lead the way and set a model. And for people who have not been able to succeed in that, they need to share their experiences and show people where it goes off the rails and what it costs and what can be done to change that course, to change that outcome. So these are some notes while I'm waiting for my clay mask to dry. This stuff's amazing. It sucks all the evil out. Kind of like doing this work does. This work kind of sucks the evil out, because when you understand it and you get under it and you have a certain amount of compassion, empathy, insight, it allows for us to sort of embrace who we are. I was listening to Julien Blanc talking about how we need to be able to sit, and he was guiding a group actually, and he was saying, I need you to sit and imagine a younger self and think about something you could not forgive yourself for, and try to reach out and embrace that part of you with forgiveness, with kindness. And then the next step was to sort of say, okay, if you could do that for your past self, can you do that for your present self? And I think it enables us to do that with greater understanding and clarity when we do understand how we work, how the program runs, and how much we're kind of at the mercy of it if we don't take conscious control of our understanding and our responses. We can't take control of it. It is a force of nature. There's only so much for that. But yeah, to be able to embrace that. And I think that's part of how we can get to, I don't know if you can rewrite the program, overwrite the program with something better that says, like, look, I'm good with me, and I have that same compassion and mercy for others as I do for myself. And I know life is complicated, and I know we're subject to so many forces, but we are also agents of our own destiny as well. And in focusing on that part and what we can do with that, that's it. The understanding and the responses come in from a different place. So I'm hoping as I unravel this, I'm better able to help people, sort of help myself first of all. This is all like my own work at this moment, just trying to put myself back together, but to invite others along and say, like, look, leave a trail of breadcrumbs, come with me, whatever. I'm on this path. If you're curious about these things, come join me in this. And I hope it's sound and it's useful, and that doing this will benefit me and the people around me and the people who can study the example and distill for themselves what is useful and applicable in their own lives. So, alright, that's what I got on that for now. I'm gonna go wash this off and see if my skin's not calmed down. Drawing all the stuff out. We don't want to leave the yuck in there. There's the Gospel of Thomas, right? what's within you. You have to draw out what's within you, otherwise it destroys you. This is that. This is the psychological and apparently the dermal edition of that. Alright, party people. I gotta get moving, but that's what I got for now, and I look forward to the next round. Bye!